Hi guys, I'm Alex from Sanzu Fabrications. What's that? Oh, what's this awesome thing on my arm? This is actually Ike's shoulder pauldron from Super Smash Bros. Wii, and this is the subject of today's video. So now, I'm going to show you how I made this. First step in making Ike's super awesome shoulder pauldron was making a pattern. So I took a couple measurements from my model and then made a pattern out of regular computer paper. When I finally got something I was happy with, I moved it onto a sturdy poster board so that I could reuse the pattern over and over. In the reference pictures, it looks like his shoulder pauldron is actually 4 separate pieces. There's the horizontal shield that goes across the pauldron, the triangle or the diamond shaped shield, then there's this big thick leather pad that rests against Ike's shoulder, and then there's a leather strap that goes around his arm. I decided to divvy up his shoulder pauldron a little differently though. I broke up the diamond portion into 2 separate halves. If you're wondering why I did that, I don't have a good reason. I want to say the initial reason was so that I could put more of a bend in the diamond in the center, but the way that I glued it, it didn't happen. It ended up being flat, which is fine because if it had that bend, the top part of the pauldron would have been poking Ike in the side of the head the entire time. So it worked out, it was fine. For anyone who is under the impression that I have any idea what I'm doing, I would like to right now relieve you of that disillusion. I am totally making all of this up as I go along, but it's okay, it's a learning experience. Once I got my shapes all cut out of the EVA foam, I went back with the heat gun and heat formed them. At this point I had to decide how much of the shape was going to come from the foam and the pattern and how much is going to come from the paint job, because I can emphasize certain curves and certain contours with shading and highlights when it comes to the paint, but some of the shapes are a little difficult, or were a little difficult for me to create with the foam. Once I got all my main pieces of the pauldron done, I got some craft foam and used my pattern pieces to start coming up with the trim. Now, the trim on Ike's armor pieces are different from Marth's, so I couldn't go about it the same way that I did Marth's breastplate. The trim on this is actually a lot thicker, so instead of doing a 1/4 inch, I did 1/2 inch. And then I covered the armor pieces in delicious caramel. No, I'm just kidding. That's Barge contact cement, and it's incredibly toxic. So even though it looks delicious, you should not eat it. Once I finished gluing on the borders, I went back and rounded the edges off with some 100 grit sandpaper, which I really like because when you sand the edges of craft foam against EVA foam, it almost blends the two together. So when you prime it and you start painting over it, it almost looks like it's one piece of foam. I went back and I repeated this for the other piece of the diamond portion of the pauldron. What you're going to see on this one that you didn't see on the other one is the border actually hangs over the main piece of foam just a little bit. I like to do that. I didn't do that too much on this one. I did it more on one of my other projects because I can go back with my X-Acto knife and just trim off that little bit of overhang to make sure that it all blends really smoothly and it really cuts down on the sanding. So once I got the 2 halves of the diamond part done, I went to the horizontal portion. And this one was actually a little more difficult. Not just because it has the curves on the top and the bottom, but because it has these diamonds that shoot out from the sides. Kids, if you need a reason to stay in school and learn trigonometry, this is it. You can look at how many times I had to draw and redraw those diamonds to get them the right size and the right shape so that they matched. And then, of course, because I wasn't paying attention, even after I cut it out, I had to go back and trim one of them because I cut the wrong line. So I really wanted to add some extra detail to this piece by adding little rivets to the inside of each of those triangles. So I got out my Dremel, I practiced, I put them onto that trim, and right about here is where I realized that I was gluing the trim on upside down. So all the rivets that I spent so much time on are actually on the inside of the foam, which is fine. That just means that the shoulder pauldron is going to be closer to the reference pictures. Right here you can see that beautiful rivet detail, which is fine because there are some actual rivets in the reference pictures on his shin guards. So I'm still gonna get a chance to use those, but they're just not gonna show up on this piece. So once I finished gluing all the borders on, I went back and sanded all of them, just a little bit on all of the pieces to round them out a little bit. Once I finished sanding all the borders, I took it outside and dremeled the back of the armor where everything would be glued, because with that textured side of the foam, they put that texture on there with like a heated stamp machine, and it seals the foam and it prevents the glue from soaking in. So anytime I'm gluing something to that side, I need to make sure that I sand it really good to open those pores again, or at least to get rid of that top layer of pores that have been sealed. Alright, so I know someone is going to notice that I'm gluing large pieces of craft foam to the back of the armor, and after my Marth's breastplate, I said I was not going to do it again. I kind of felt like I had to do it on this one because just the way that the armor lays on Ike, from certain angles you're going to be able to see the back of it. And I didn't want to have to worry about there being pictures where you could tell that his armor was obviously made out of floor mats. Speaking of hiding how his armor is constructed, right now I'm adding glue to the corners of the armor, and then I'm going to glue these small bits of craft foam over them, and then I'm going to sand the edges so that they kind of blend to make it look like that diamond part is one piece. Now as for how the pauldron actually attaches to Ike, I'm kind of straying away from the reference pictures. Since this isn't actually made out of metal, it's going to be made out of a soft foam, I don't need that big pad part that rests against his shoulder between his arm and the pauldron. So what I'm going to do here is just glue on a little pad of EVA foam. Then when I actually make the armband out of fabric, I'm going to attach that to the armband, and then that's gonna Velcro around Ike's arm. So even though EVA foam doesn't weigh that much, it'll cut down on some of the bulk, and it'll just make the pauldron a lot more comfortable to wear. So once everything was finally glued and sanded, got out a pen and marked some battle damage and then cut it into the pauldron with my heat knife. When you do this, make sure you have a window open and don't set off your smoke alarm a bunch of times like I did. Once that was done, I added a little bit of masking tape to the back side where the pauldron was going to attach to the armband, and then I took it out and coated it in 3 coats of Plastidip so that it would be all ready to be painted. I let the whole thing dry overnight, brought it back inside, removed the masking tape, and now I've got Ike's shoulder pauldron all finished. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or you learned something from it, be sure to leave a like. If you want to see more videos like this, then be sure to subscribe. See you later. Have a great day.